They said I wasn't Prescott enough, not smart enough, not bold enough, not blood enough. 6 years ago, they looked me in the eye and closed the door in my face. They told me to stay in my lane while they toasted champagne above me. But today, I walked into the same boardroom, not as the forgotten niece they once dismissed, but as the CEO of the company that's been keeping their empire afloat. They didn't know it was me until I took the floor and flipped the script. This isn't revenge, this is the audit, and it starts now. They told me I didn't belong. 6 years ago, in a glass-walled boardroom overlooking the skyline of Atlanta, I stood in front of the Prescott Group's executive committee with a resume stacked higher than the tallest building in sight. Dual degrees from MIT and Wharton, a portfolio of early-stage strategy models, an ambition that didn't flinch. But none of it mattered. Gerald Prescott, the patriarch, leaned back in his leather chair and said, "Avery, you're brilliant, but this company runs on bloodlines, not bullet points." His son, Martin, smirked. "It's not personal, it's heritage, you understand." I did understand. I understood that no matter how qualified I wasn't born with the right last name. My mother was a Prescott by marriage. That made me acceptable for holidays, not leadership. I left quietly that day, my resume still warm in my hand, my pride packed tightly in my chest. No goodbyes, no second chances, just the slow closing of a door that was never truly open. But I didn't disappear. I pivoted. I started Stratanova Technologies in a borrowed co-working space with 2 interns and a single laptop. I slept on couches, skipped dinners, cold emailed CEOs between midnight and sunrise. And I listened, not to their rejection, but to the gaps in their systems, the pain points in their logistics, the silence in their supply chains. I built software that fixed it. In 2 years, we landed our first Fortune 100 contract. In 3, we opened offices in Chicago and Seattle. By year 4, Stratanova was managing operations for clients across 5 continents, and by year 5, we became Prescott Group's largest vendor, quietly, invisibly. Through a front partner firm, we funneled over $92 million annually into their procurement pipeline. They never bothered to ask who was behind it. Why would they? In their minds, I was still the girl who didn't belong. But now? Now I was the reason they were solvent. And I was ready to return. Not for vengeance, for clarity. To show them what they had missed. Not out of malice, but out of arrogance. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I was going to raise the stakes. As I walked through the revolving glass doors of Prescott headquarters again, everything looked the same. But I didn't feel the same. Gone was the cautious intern who once waited outside those walls for approval. I was here to speak as CEO, to renegotiate every contract. And to make it clear, this time, the seat at the table wasn't being requested. It was already mine. The conference room was exactly as I remembered: marble-topped table, sleek black chairs, and a wall of windows overlooking downtown Atlanta. Only this time, I wasn't standing at the edge of the room waiting to be acknowledged. I was on the agenda. Prescott Group's annual Strategic Partner Summit was in full swing, complete with catered lunches, branded folders, and the usual hollow enthusiasm. Martin Prescott took the stage first, striding to the podium with the practiced ease of someone who'd never had to earn the mic. "Thanks to our ongoing partnerships," he said, "this quarter's numbers are trending strong. Special thanks to our anchor account, Stratanova Technologies, which continues to support 40% of our operational throughput." He didn't even blink. Didn't know the woman he was praising was sitting 20 feet away, stirring an espresso with deliberate calm. When my name was called, a hush swept the room. "Ms. Quinn, the floor is yours." I rose, my heels clicking against polished floors, and walked to the front. My presence alone fractured the composure of half the room. Gerald's eyes narrowed. Martin did a double take. "Avery," he blurted, "what are you— This meeting is for senior partners." I met his gaze, steady. "I'm here representing Stratanova Technologies. We need to discuss immediate renegotiation of all contracts before renewal." The air went thick. Gerald leaned forward, voice edged. "Stratanova sends intermediaries, always." I smiled. "And you're looking at her." Shock flickered across every face. Styluses were dropped, laptops frozen mid-click, murmurs spread like wildfire. "That's not possible," Martin muttered. "We vetted your team. You ran a small boutique ops firm." I tapped my tablet. The screen behind me lit up with the first slide of my deck. "The boutique firm was a front. Stratanova is mine. I've built it over the last 6 years into a multinational logistics and systems provider. We support 9 Fortune 500 clients and run over $200 million in annual contracts." Gasps. Gerald stood pale. "You deceived us." I didn't flinch. "You dismissed me, there's a difference." Behind me, the screen shifted again, showing audited financials, global reach, and comparative metrics. As of Q4, our operations outsized Prescott's by a factor of 2.6, More importantly, without Stratanova, your quarterly solvency evaporates. Martin scrambled to his feet. That's not, you can't be. Can't be what? I asked softly. The intern you mocked? The niece who wasn't good enough? Or the woman now holding your financial lifeline in her hand? The silence wasn't awkward, it was absolute. The next morning, I arrived before the sun broke through the glass towers of downtown. The same security guard from 6 years ago spotted me as I stepped through the lobby. He stood up so fast he nearly spilled his coffee. Ms. Quinn, he said, blinking, welcome back. Funny, I murmured, passing him. What fear can do to punctuality? The executive floor was already buzzing when I stepped off the elevator. Copies of the preliminary audit summary had been distributed hours earlier, and whispers now filled every corner. Martin looked hollowed out, eyes rimmed with fatigue. Gerald was stone-faced. I didn't hesitate. I entered the boardroom like it was mine, because in every way that mattered, it now was. Good morning, I said, placing my leather folder on the table. Let's begin. Gerald cleared his throat. Avery, perhaps a word in private before we start. I tilted my head. I think we've had enough private conversations in this family. I nodded to my audit director, Michael, who began distributing thick packets. The room rustled with tension as pages flipped, eyes widened, and expressions shifted from confusion to dread. This can't be right, one board member muttered. Oh, it is, I said calmly. I clicked to the first slide on the screen. Let's begin with the ghost invoices. Martin flinched. Over $8.1 million in losses hidden under fake client metrics and deferred receivables, I continued. Inventories that never existed. Revenue projections inflated beyond realistic models. Martin opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. Or we can move on to the part where Prescott Group, without Stratanova, is officially insolvent by next quarter. The boardroom erupted in low gasps. Legal counsel leaned into one another. One independent director pressed his palm to his forehead. You're trying to ruin us, Martin said, his voice cracking. I looked at him, utterly composed. No, Martin, you did that all by yourself. Gerald slammed a hand against the table. This is family, damn it! I turned toward him. You mean the family that said I wasn't cut out for leadership? That offered me a junior analyst job while I was building a multi-million-dollar enterprise? Silence. I clicked to the next slide, dependency exposure. As of this quarter, 52% of Prescott revenue is directly tied to us. If I pull the contracts, that number drops to 0. They didn't speak when I re-entered the boardroom that afternoon. No smug grins, no dismissive glances, just silence. The kind that follows realization. Gerald sat slumped at the head of the table, his hand resting on the armrest like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Martin, seated beside him, looked like a man unraveling thread by thread. Their legal team huddled to the left, flipping pages in the audit documents like salvation might be hiding on page 72. Before we proceed, Gerald said slowly, the rasp in his voice noticeable now, perhaps we could come to a mutual understanding. I raised a brow. You mean negotiate? He nodded stiffly. I exhaled quietly. Then here are your choices. I pulled out a sealed envelope and laid it in the center of the table. Inside, you'll find 2 documents. Option A, full executive restructuring. Martin steps down. Independent oversight installed. Stratanova maintains a reduced partnership under quarterly audits. The room held its breath. Option B? Martin asked, his voice tight. I met his eyes. I walk, and the full forensic report goes to the Federal Commission. Someone actually gasped. A long silence followed. Gerald finally asked, This is about revenge, isn't it? I gave him nothing but truth. This is about accountability. You taught me that business is for those who belong. I'm simply proving I do. Martin rose abruptly. You can't just take everything from us. I stood as well, calm as ever. I didn't take anything. I built what you left behind. The independent board members shifted uncomfortably. Finally, one spoke. We vote in favor of option A. Martin looked betrayed. Gerald looked tired. And for the first time, the room didn't argue. They listened. By the time the boardroom doors opened again, the air inside felt different. Not just tense, humbled. The kind of quiet that follows not a storm, but a reckoning. I didn't bring threats. I brought decisions. You asked what I wanted, I said, placing the second envelope onto the table with deliberate calm. I want you to choose. The first document outlined a path forward. Martin's immediate resignation, Gerald's transition into retirement, and a fully restructured leadership team approved by an independent audit firm. Stratanova would maintain a reduced but strategic partnership with quarterly oversight. The second? Total withdrawal. Every contract terminated within 7 business days. Audit findings released publicly. SEC, IRS, federal oversight triggered. I didn't need to raise my voice. I had evidence, I had leverage, and most importantly, I had options. Martin glanced around looking for someone to rescue him. No one moved. You're bluffing, he said finally, but even his voice didn't believe it. I opened my tablet, tapped once. The termination process has already been drafted. One click, and it's real. Gerald looked pale. You would destroy your own family? I leaned forward, my voice low and unshaking. You already did, the day you told me I wasn't enough. Silence stretched. Finally, one of the independent board members, Mr. Caldwell, cleared his throat. We vote to accept Proposal 1. A formal motion, a second, it passed. Martin erupted. You can't just erase us! I met his fury with stillness. I didn't erase you, I outgrew you. Gerald looked at me for a long moment, not with hatred, not even regret. Just the weary recognition of a man who had underestimated the wrong person for too long. He nodded once. Then it's done, he said quietly. I collected the signed document, slid it into my folder, and rose. No press, no drama, but from now on, Prescott answers to more than just legacy. It answers to performance. As I walked out, I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. By sunset, it was official. Martin's resignation landed with a whisper, not a press release. No applause. Just a man quietly handing over his badge and clearing his office into boxes that no longer carried weight. Gerald? He accepted early retirement. There was no ceremony, no gold watch, no speech. Only a silent walk out of the building he once ruled, his name still etched on the marble wall, soon to be replaced. No one argued, no one thanked him. Prescott Group, once a monument to tradition and nepotism, now operated under external oversight, directed by a partnership with the very woman they once dismissed. Me. I stepped into the top-floor suite, the one I'd been told I'd never earn. It was quiet, expansive, and mine. I took my time unpacking, placed the final audit folder in the locked drawer, and printed one last document, an old email, dated 6 years ago, from Gerald Prescott. Dear Avery, while we appreciate your passion, we believe you lack the strategic leadership instincts for this organization. Perhaps a junior role in support operations would suit you better. I didn't need to reread it. I framed it, hung it directly across from my new desk. The message from my mother came in just after. You didn't have to embarrass him, he's still your uncle. Then my father. Family doesn't humiliate each other in public. My cousins chimed in. You've ruined everything, for what? I opened the family group chat, typed one line. Don't worry about the family name, it's finally in qualified hands. Then I muted the thread. Outside, the lights of Atlanta flickered to life. The skyline no longer looked down on me. I had met it, eye to eye. There was no parade, no champagne, just the stillness of knowing that I hadn't taken revenge. I had taken control. Not to destroy their legacy, but to redefine it. They built walls to keep me out. I built a door and walked through it. And when they finally looked up, they realized the room now belonged to me. Not because I demanded it, because I earned it. I never needed their approval. I just needed the chance to build without it. This wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could be right, even when they refused to see it. So if you've ever been underestimated, ignored, shut out of rooms you were qualified to lead, don't waste your breath begging for a seat. Build your own table. And when they finally turn around, make sure the chair you're sitting in has your name on it. Because legacy isn't something you inherit, it's something you earn. And if this story hits somewhere deep, don't just watch in silence. Subscribe. Share it with someone who's been told they're not enough. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the quietest victories.